My book review today is on Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza. It looks like this. I have the hardcover copy. It was published this year in 2012, so by now I think it would probably have a soft copy. You can't see it here because it's in reverse, but the subtitle there is How to Lose Your Mind and Create a New One, which gives some idea of the subject matter discussed in the book. Dr. Joe Dispenza is an American neuroscientist. He's done a lot of research into neurofunction and the effect of meditation on the brain. I first heard of him through the movie What the Bleep Do We Know? This movie, if you've seen it and didn't like it, don't let that put you off the book because the information is presented in a much different way. I liked the movie, but some of aspects of it were a bit hard to digest, and I had to take some of the concepts with a grain of salt. But it definitely opened up some fresh lines of inquiry, and some sort of new ways of looking at ideas. So if you haven't seen it, I do recommend it. It's called What the Bleep Do We Know? So this book explores the relationship between mind and matter, and it's one of so many books that on this topic. But the reason I like this book is because it's very scientific and gives you very rational basis for the claims that it makes. The basic claims and the basic premise of the book is that our personalities and behavior is based upon a set of memorized unconscious actions and reactions to the external world, and that we have the ability to, through meditation and the meditation techniques that he discusses, to exert our will on these unconscious actions, to change them, to experience a different experience of reality. Embedded in this idea is that our thoughts affect reality, and this is a subject matter discussed by many books, but he really gets to the nitty-gritty of why that's a good book, because it demystifies some of those mystical concepts such as meditation, and even goes into a higher intelligence. But he does it in such a way that it's not off-putting. It really he's just asking you to listen to the concepts and adopt some new techniques, and if they work, if they give you results, then that's a good thing, and if not, then keep searching for something that does work. He does a good job of explaining how we got to the worldview today that mind and matter are two separate things. He does this by tracing science back to the 17th century, back to Rene Descartes, who we know as the I think therefore I am guy. But he was a mathematician and a philosopher back then, and he was a mechanist, so of the view that things operated in line with a set of principles, but he was unable to find a universal set of principles that applied equally to mind and matter. So he devised these two concepts and imposed this dualistic view that they're separate things. And this dualistic model was perpetrated by Isaac Newton, who, as we know, developed that classical Newton model of the universe, and really helped humanity in that we were able to calculate and predict how objects would operate. But his model of the world viewed energy as an external force that applied to physical objects, which isn't quite right. Sort of through Einstein and through science, the way science has developed now, we understand that that energy isn't an external force, that matter is made up of energy, and Einstein's famous E equals mc squared proved that energy and matter are so intrinsically linked that they're one and the same thing. Energy is in fact the fabric of all matter, including the mind. So Einstein, as well as being an absolute genius, I really love learning about Einstein's theories, because he was I don't know if people realize how spiritual he was, and his science reinforce much of the teachings of Buddha and Jesus Christ and other mystics throughout history, including more recently Eckhart Tolle. And to hear it come through such a genius of a man, and someone so engrounded with rational thought, is really refreshing, and I think he's done a lot for humans. So not least of all was his thinking paved the way for a new field of science called quantum physics. And through quantum physics, we now know that the subatomic particles that make up atoms don't operate following the laws of the classic Newton style, and it really challenges this Cartesian Newtonian duality model, because although we can predict the way large objects move and operate, these laws don't apply to that subatomic level, and it's flawed at that very fundamental level. We now know that atoms are basically empty space. I think it's 99.99% of an atom is empty space, which is it's really interesting when you think if an atom is empty space and everything is made up of atoms, you can only conclude that everything is basically nothing. I think I read somewhere that all the matter in the universe was once condensed to the size of a pea, which is very interesting to sort of hard to grasp as a concept. The other mind-blowing concept that has arisen out of quantum physics is that these subatomic particles behave differently when they're observed. So this is, you might have heard of the collapse of the wave function, or more commonly the observer effect. So, and you should look this up if you're interested. There's lots of really cool videos on YouTube. But when these particles are observed, or when there's a video camera on them, they behave differently than when they're not observed and when there's not a video camera on them. And that, if you really grasp this idea that our attention is creating, our internal attention is creating a measurable effect on the external world, then you can no longer be of the idea that mind and matter are two separate things, and that if you take it further, and the book does a good job in doing this, you have to accept, you come to the idea that perhaps our mind is creating our reality rather than just influencing it, which is a very empowering thought. He then starts talking about meditation and how through meditation you can stop your unconscious memorized reactions to the external world and replace them with new reactions, sort of so that you can change your mind in order to change your experience of reality. I think meditation is largely misunderstood in our society and seen for something that's useful for monks sitting up in the Himalayas. But I think a good way to think of meditation is, if you think of what it means in Tibetan, it means to become familiar with, and that's exactly what you're doing. You're turning your focus from outwards onto yourself and really becoming familiar with yourself and observing yourself. You're going from being a doer to a watcher, and that you can see that if you think of an analogy, you can really see the benefit of it. So if someone's training someone else in sport, just say they're training them in sprinting and they want them to change a particular body movement, they'll often videotape them, because it's only when you see what you're doing that you can implement change and try something different. And I think that's a good way of thinking of meditation. So you're watching what you're doing now, and that's a good way to implement change. Another way to think about it is in Sanskrit it means to cultivate, which is it's really rich in analogy, in that everyone knows what it's like to, or can see what it's like to cultivate a garden. So you're putting effort in, and the point is to get some reward back, and it means that you're in control. So you're cultivating yourself. He then goes on to give quite a detailed program of meditation, which is quite easy to follow, and explains the effect that meditation has on brainwaves and the benefits that you can expect to experience if you follow the program. Even if you're not have no intention of starting to meditate, but just interested in these concepts. I think it's a really good book to read. One of the better ones and more scientific ones that I've read on the topics. It's really given me a different way of looking at our personalities and how behaviours have developed, and that it's quite an empowering book in that it suggests that you do have power that the power lies within you to react to the outside world rather than letting life just come along and dictate your experience. So, I definitely recommend this book. Please let me know what you think if you do read it. I should mention that he's also written another book called Evolve Your Brain. He wrote that first, so if you think you're interested in reading both these books, it probably does make sense to read Evolve Your Brain first, but I haven't read it, and that didn't take away from any of the value of this book.